Hi guys, today I'm going to be reviewing the first of the papers I got in my art supply haul, which if you haven't watched, I'll include the link down below or maybe somewhere in this video, if I remember. And so, the first paper I got was the Canson XL Watercolor Pad. So the Canson XL Watercolor Pad is cold press, it's 9 by 12 inches, so it's pretty big, it's 140 pounds and 300 GSM. And there's 30 sheets per pad. This is a very thick pad. Yeah. And if we're gonna take a look at the inside, let me try to zoom it out so that you can see. Okay, it's actually really hard to capture, but inside there's the history of Canson, and they've actually been manufacturing paper since 1557 in France. So wow, they're really old. And there's also information at the bottom here. There's a chart about the different kinds of pads they have in their XL series. They actually have papers for sketch, mixed media, Bristol, oil and acrylic, and it says here like what mediums are good. Now for the watercolor, let's actually try to zoom in a bit so that you guys can see. I'm just gonna take a look. Okay, so for the watercolor, pencils are rated as 2 stars, so they're 1 star is good, 2 stars are excellent, and 3 stars are exceptional. So they say that pencil and crayon, color pencil, pen and ink, charcoal, and pastel are excellent on this paper. And marker is just good or 1 star. Then watercolor is 3 stars. It's supposed to be 3 stars. I mean, it's watercolor paper. And then acrylic is 2 stars. And then there's actually no stars at all for oil. So I don't think they recommend this paper for oil painting. They have a specific paper for oil and acrylic. And this paper only comes in pads here on the side. They have a table if it comes in pads, sheets, and rolls. Only the mixed media paper comes in sheets and rolls as well. The rest are just in pad. So this is some pretty handy information if you're working on specific mediums and you want to see what paper works for you. Okay, so now I'm going to give a demo about how different mediums work on this paper. So the first medium I'm testing is watercolor. I'm using my Winsor & Newton Professional Watercolor, which I reviewed in the past, so if you're interested in the product, just check it out. And first I'm going to do just a dry stroke, so just a simple stroke, and I'm going to see how it kind of looks like when it dries later. So far there's no feathering, which is good. And it seems to retain the color pretty well. And later we're gonna see if we can lift off the color easily. Next up, I'm going to try to do a variegated wash or a gradient. So we're just gonna let that dry for some time, and we're going to see how the colors change or gets better. And then next I'm going to do a wet on wet. So at first I saturate the paper with some water, just plain water, and then I'll be dropping in different colors and I'll be seeing how they mix in with each other. And my first reaction was upon dropping the colors is that these colors don't flow as much on this paper. It tends to kind of cauliflower out, as they call it, kind of does this bloom shape, but it doesn't really flow with the other colors like water. So that might be an effect that you like or not, depending on your preference. And we're going to see how it dried this other areas of paint. So far, okay, this wet on wet wash is looking pretty good, but I'm not sure how well it'll retain the colors when it's dry. Now looking at the variegated wash, the colors actually retain pretty okay, although the gradation isn't as apparent. And here for the dry stroke, I'm going to try to lift an area at the end, and the color seems to lighten up a bit, although there's still like the slight outline of the area that was originally there. And you can see I scrubbed too much and the paper actually started to peel. So this is not paper you could easily erase watercolor on. And don't scrub too much or else you'll end up destroying the paper. And so the next medium I'm going to test after watercolor is the Zig Clean Color markers, because I also reviewed those markers before and I really like using them as watercolor markers because they're also water-based. and they're really versatile. You can use them dry, you can use them wet. So I'm starting off with this reddish mark. Can't remember the color name, yeah. And I'm going to test how the application is dry. Now, if you're going to use these markers dry, it feels kind of dry on this paper. You can feel that the paper is really going to suck out a lot of the color that's on the marker. So do be warned that that's something to be aware of. Your markers might lose ink really quickly. Now I'm going to try to blend two colors dry without using any water. And the colors blend really well. It's such a pleasure to work with the markers on this paper. So nice. And next off, I'm laying down my orange and then I'm going to try to blend it out with water. Like what I did with my other demo of these markers. And the marker blends super well on this paper. You can see that it immediately kind of waters out and not a lot of the original outline remain. Although I guess if you let it dry longer, it'll be harder to lift it. But still really good because with some paper, the marker really clings on the paper and that's bad. So at least here, it's less stubborn. And other test I'm going to do is a watercolor pencil test, and I'm using a Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer. And I'm seeing how the colors blend on this paper dry, and they seem to blend quite well. Since the paper has some tooth, so if you like working with toothy paper, you're gonna like it. And blending wet, the pencil blends really well. The pigment sticks a bit to the paper, although not to the point where it doesn't get dissolved by the water or it clings to the grain of the paper. So really nice. And the colors are still vibrant. Although since it's watercolor paper, it tends to lose a bit of the vibrancy when it's wet compared to the ink tents, which will probably give really more vibrant results. And the last test I'm going to do is a test with Copic markers. I'm going to see how they work with this paper since I know some artists like to use watercolor paper with these markers. And my first impression is that this paper will really suck the markers dry, even drier than the Zig markers actually. And it blends okay, but it's not the best paper. I think because it has a bit of grain. The hot press watercolor paper probably work a lot better, and when I review the arches, I'll do more comparison then. So this has been the 3 demos. These 2 mediums are the ones I love the best, clean color and watercolor pen. Here at the side, I just did a simple doodle with some pens and played along with brush pens, and then I'm gonna try to combine the different mediums that I tried on the other side of the paper, except for the Copic markers because I think that this paper really isn't good for the markers, so I'd just be wasting ink. So I'm going to go over this in time-lapse and I'm just going to narrate how the process went and how the supplies work. So I'm starting off wetting the background and I do a light wet on wet wash. This paper isn't really the best for wet on wet since the colors don't flow as well, but it's passable. And then I colored the skin and the hat with just watercolors and dry strokes, and it worked quite well. For the clothes, I used the clean color markers and then I kind of lay in the shadow for the darker areas and then I blend it out with water, and it seemed to work pretty well. There isn't a lot of the outline of the original stroke remaining, so this technique is really good. And for the lining, I'm kind of layering on the clean colors and blending it out a bit dry. And you can see that the colors blend into each other really well. So the clean colors are also great. And I didn't test the watercolor paper, the watercolor pencil, but it works really well from the swatches, so I think it'll work well. And if you do a bit of layering, I think this paper can take some, but after like a bit of layering, the paper will definitely start to pill. So I think it's wise to practice stroke economy on this, or like be really efficient with your painting, just so you don't end up destroying the paper from overworking the painting. Yeah, so that has been my overview of the Canson XL paper. I do think that it is really good for the price. Lots of quantity. I think it's 30 sheets per pad. Really good. And it's 140 pounds, 300 GSM, so it can take a lot of water. And it's really affordable, so you can use it for practicing and you won't have to worry about wasting paper. So that has been it for my overview on the Canson XL Watercolor paper, and I plan to do overviews for the other papers I bought as well, since I bought quite a bit of them. So if you enjoyed this video, show some of the thumbs up down below and subscribe to my channel because I definitely have a lot more product reviews coming up. Actually, I have quite a bit of a backlog. So yeah, thanks for watching!